Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So Technology series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and of course we have more Sega Saturn testing for you because there's a core update and we are on the most current core. This is going to be a mix of games we've never tested before and viewer requests to see how games are doing. So every single time I do a video, if you have any requests for the next one, leave me a comment down below and I'll try to hit them all up. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's get right into it. We're going to be doing a mix of 3D and 2D today, and we're going to start off with Virtua Fighter Kids. This is such an interesting pivot from the Virtua Fighter formula, and it's actually an extremely good game, even if it does look a little bit goofy in design. This was Sega just having some fun, and you can definitely tell here. And the nice thing is, this game is rock solid flawless on the current core as far as I can tell. If you do see a little bit of interlacing line in the model, that's because this runs in the high resolution mode, and that's going to always come through on a direct capture. But just like Virtua Fighter 2, because it does share an engine, Virtua Fighter Kids is just doing exactly what it should be. The speed and gameplay is smooth, there's no slowdowns whatsoever. That's something we used to see in the earlier cores on Virtua Fighter 2 and Virtua Fighter Kids. Now today, everything seems to be fluid as far as my eye can tell. And all of the VDP1 and VDP2 implementations with the pseudo infinite background and the pseudo infinite floor are working as well. And I just love all of the model designs. Seeing the classic Virtua Fighter characters in this super deformed chibi style aspect just is a really good look. It's almost like you're fighting with bobbleheads. And this is the type of game you can sit down with on MiSTer FPGA today, hit start, and see the credits as long as your skill level holds up. There's no freezing, there's no glitching, the audio's coming through correctly. If there's anything different between this game on MiSTer and this game on real hardware, I wouldn't be able to tell. It's probably one of those games, once the core is done, I will compare on real hardware because I have the disc, the Saturn, as well as the RGB out to be able to put this directly up against MiSTer FPGA. And I think I could probably even do that today and I wouldn't find any issues. Even Kage's headband there came off like it should, bounced on the floor, and everything just worked. And that's where the core is getting on certain games like Virtua Fighter Kids. If there's any issue whatsoever, maybe only the biggest fan of this game ever would be able to notice it, but your typical casual Sega Saturn fan is just going to hit start, have some fun, and then move on to the next game. And of course, because this is a two-player game, you can just grab a second controller and play with friends just like you would on real hardware. And that is one of the best compliments I can give to the core at SRG 320's work. The list of games that I can just say play like real hardware and all you need to worry about is having fun is growing every single time we get a new core. But now that we've done a 3D fighting game, let's move over to a 2D fighting game, and one that I've gotten a lot of requests for. This is Cyberbots by Capcom. Yes, a core exists on the Capcom CPS2 side of things on the arcade front from Hotego and his team, but the Sega Saturn version has an arranged soundtrack and a couple other bonus items that are fun to have, and honestly from a testing perspective, we want to see how this game is running. The good news is from the intro track screen here all the way through to the gameplay, it is just absolutely spectacular. You have these massive 2D sprites for the characters, you have these huge backgrounds that are rotating and moving around all over the place. This game is just chock full of detail on the 2D front, and again, if there's anything wrong with this, I don't think anyone would notice whatsoever, because outside of X-Men vs Street Fighter, it seems like pretty much every single Capcom fighting game for the Sega Saturn is running perfectly on the core, and you just absolutely love to see that. This is definitely one of those deeper cut Capcom games. People are going to know Street Fighter or Darkstalkers way more than something like this, but it is an absolutely fun game to play, and it came out on Sega Saturn with a really fun special edition as well that I don't have on the shelf but kind of want to add now. But as far as the visuals are concerned, just take a look around the entire screen. All of the 2D effects, all of the sprites, all of the background, they're perfectly lined up, there's no glitching in them whatsoever, and you combine that together with rock solid controls and zero latency on the MiSTer FPGA side of things, and you just have a great experience. And I love how in this city, it kind of feels like a big robotic kaiju battle come to life. And like pretty much every other Capcom game playing on the core, the sound quality seems to be a 10 out of 10. Listen for 35 seconds, I'll be back with more Sega Saturn games that just work well.
Combo! Can I get damage? speed!
Just sounds great. So if you want to play Cyberbots today, just grab your Sega Saturn MiSTer FPGA Core, load up the game, and just start playing. You can see the credits scroll, you can beat the game, you can have 2-player matches, you can just treat this like it's a real Sega Saturn, because in essence on the current FPGA code, it is just a Sega Saturn. Now let's take a look at a game that didn't actually come out for the Saturn. This is the Unreal Engine demo, and the reason I'm showing this is because just recently-ish, gourad shading was improved on the core and it is now correct, and this gives this game a fundamentally much better look. It's also hyper impressive that any sort of developer could bring the engine over to Sega Saturn in general and get this level of performance out of it. This proves that Unreal would have been possible on the Saturn back in the day. And this is like a lobotomy software game like Power Slave or Quake, where it just takes a game you know and love and moves it over to an engine on Saturn that just makes it look so spectacular. And with the gourad shading being correct, you get such a unique and interesting image out of this. It's dark, it's gritty, it's grainy, it has that horror kind of machine aesthetic going on for it, and that translates so well over to the overall look of the Sega Saturn. And when you combine that together with the MiSTer FPGA Core and this running properly on it, you just get such a fun sensation of being in the world of Unreal, but pun very much intended, it feels unreal because it's running on the Saturn, not on PC hardware. And you'll see here all of those effects seem to be working well. Every once in a while some of the particles do seem to persist onto the screen and will not clear themselves, but I would have to actually check on real hardware to see if that's what happens there as well, because with any sort of fan game it's hard to say where the core problems stop and where the lack of finished development on the actual game itself starts. It might be in that. If you know, leave me a comment down below. But as far as the overall look of Unreal on Saturn Core today, having the gourad shading perfectly fixed makes this just a fundamentally prettier image to look at. Granted, the world of Unreal definitely wouldn't be described as pretty, but it is a nice appearance. You'll see here those particles are persisting on the screen once you look at that monitor, so I will have to check that against real hardware. But again, if anybody knows, tell me down below if that happens on your real hardware or not. But this is why gourad shading is so important on the core, and I love that you have these monitors here as well that basically show the gameplay in motion. It's an awesome time, definitely check it out. Now moving on to another game where I think the best part of it is the zoom platform animation at the front, we have Zero Divide. This is another 3D fighting game, and I've never clicked with it. I understand what it's trying to do, I've just never fallen in love with it, but if you love this game, leave me a comment down below and tell me why, because I would be curious. And this is one I don't think we've ever tested on the series, and I have gotten some requests for it, or if we did test it was probably back in spring of last year and I've just forgotten, because I've run so many different tests on the Sega Saturn Core on so many different core variants, even I at this point in time cannot remember everything I have done. But the good part is, from the sound to the visuals, this game is working exactly as it should. But that's the thing, you either love this game or you don't, and I'm definitely in the don't camp on it. It's definitely more of a B tier fighter, but again, the sound is perfect. Listen, and I'll be right back. It's got a great soundtrack, that's for sure, and the performance here I have got nothing to complain about whatsoever. It's just more of the actual combat engine in this game that I've never been a huge fan on. Zero Divide is a pretty game, it's got some really nice colors, but as far as the combat's concerned, I've just never really gotten used to all of the movesets and really into the game. So again, if there's anything I'm missing or if you can help me better understand it, do leave me that comment down below, because I understand some people absolutely love this game and others don't really care for it that much whatsoever. And that's the fun thing about the Sega Saturn Core and consoles in general. I don't have to love something for you to love it. Now moving on to one more game, and if you can't tell already, this is a fighting themed video. I'm going to be taking a look at Road Rash. Obviously it's a racing game, but it does have fighting game mechanics, so basically this entire video in one way or another was a fighting game test. And the fun part about Road Rash is it mixes 2D elements and 3D elements together, as well as this undulating road that basically draws into infinity, giving VDP1 and VDP2 an absolute workout. And the thing about this game is if the visuals break down, if there's any glitches, that illusion of having that infinite road that stretches into the screen 100% breaks down, and you can see how it does. But here on the current core, there's nothing about this that doesn't seem to be a great time. Now granted, I still prefer the 3DO version of Road Rash over the Sega Saturn one, but that's just because I'm a huge 3DO fan and just recently did a video on it. But here on the current core, it's running well, the frame rate is good, all of the controls are there, all of the mix of 3D and 2D is functioning, and all of the different level of detail things are working as expected. Just don't forget, in Road Rash, you're definitely going to fall off that bike. There is a big risk versus reward here, and that's what I actually love about this series. The races are long, and if you make a single mistake, you can go from being in first place to being back at 8th that quickly, and you have to run back to pick up your bike. And that is always why I've loved it. It just throws up enough challenge, and I love racing games where it's point A to point B and not laps. Don't get me wrong, laps are fun as well, but you'll see there with punching out that cop on the motorcycle, this is a fighting game, and it does qualify for a fighting game video, even if the theming was inadvertent. I just started adding things to the timeline and ended up right here. But again, this just looks spectacular. All of the different effects, the polygons, the 2D art, the sprites, that cloud in the sky, all of the scrolling just is doing what it would on real hardware, and that is a good testament to where the core is currently at. I love being able to show you things that are problems, but as the core evolves, we're getting less and less problems. It takes longer to actually find something that isn't working as expected, which is a great thing as far as the core development is concerned. There's so many amazing games on Sega Saturn, and there's so many you can play today and just sit down and enjoy it like it's a real hardware experience. And Road Rash is one of those games I'm adding to the list. I can't see anything wrong with it. I can't feel anything wrong with it. The only problem is we just got hit head on by a truck. And that's the current slate of Sega Saturn testing on the current core. This is shaping up to be so incredibly good, and SRG320 is constantly updating the core with new features and new fixes. And if you do find any bugs, go over to GitHub and open a ticket if there isn't already one open, because he does seem to go through those tickets, fix bugs from seeing them, and then close them down and add new updates. But go grab your MiSTer, load up the Sega Saturn core, play some of these games, and have some fun. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.